welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Posted by Neurology MD, October 17th, 2024, 11:48 p.m. I've always been a woman of science. 14 years studying neurological disorders has taught me to question what I see, to understand that perception isn't reality. The brain is a remarkable instrument, but fallible, susceptible to misfires, optical illusions, pareidolia. When patients tell me they're seeing things, I don't dismiss them. I explain the mechanism, the why. There's always a why. But now I'm the one seeing things, and I can't explain the why. It started 3 days ago, walking home from Jefferson Hospital after a 12-hour shift. October in Philadelphia brings early sunsets, and Rittenhouse Square was bathed in that peculiar golden hour light that stretches shadows across cobblestones. I was exhausted, thinking about nothing but a hot shower and sleep when my phone buzzed. Just a standard notification, weather alert, suggesting potential fog overnight. I barely registered it, just swiped it away. That's when I noticed my shadow. It didn't match me. Just for a second, just a slight delay when I lowered my arm, like it was a half-second behind, catching up. I stopped, staring at the elongated silhouette stretching across the pavement. It stopped too, perfectly aligned again. Sleep deprivation, I told myself. Visual processing lag. I kept walking. The shadow followed, normal again. Just a trick of the fading light. Nothing more, until it happened again 2 blocks later. I raised my hand to brush hair from my face, and my shadow, I swear this happened, raised its arm a full second after I did. And when I froze, hand still lifted, my shadow's arm continued moving as if waving. My coffee cup hit the sidewalk. Hot liquid splashed my ankles, but I barely felt it. I was fixated on that dark silhouette against the brick wall, perfectly still now, matching my pose exactly. A couple passed by, giving me a wide berth. The woman whispered something. I must have looked deranged, staring at a wall, spilled coffee at my feet. Did you see that? I asked, pointing. They hurried past without answering. Their shadows slid across the wall behind them, normal, synchronized, unremarkable. I made it home in record time, avoiding looking at my shadow the entire way. Told myself I was overtired, experiencing micro-sleeps, perhaps even a mild hallucination from sleep deprivation. I've counseled patients through worse. The mind plays tricks when exhausted. I slept for 10 hours straight. Woke feeling refreshed, rational. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom blinds, creating parallel bars of light and shadow on my hardwood floor. I watched my shadow move as I moved, perfect synchronization. The memory of the previous evening seemed distant, almost comical. Work was normal. Patient after patient with actual diagnosable conditions. Mr. Abernathy with his progressive supranuclear palsy, the Williams girl with her visual agnosia, real neurological issues with explanations, treatments, prognosis. During lunch, I scrolled through local news on my phone. Nothing unusual. Traffic reports, political squabbles, weekend weather forecasts. Then a small article caught my eye. City officials' address reports of visual disturbances. The piece was brief, dismissive. Some residents had reported unusual visual phenomena in Center City over the past week. Officials attributed it to refraction effects from new energy-efficient glass installed in several skyscrapers combined with the seasonal atmospheric conditions. Nothing to be concerned about. I thought about calling the journalist, telling them what I'd seen, but what exactly had I seen? A momentary visual glitch that my tired brain had magnified? I'd sound like one of those people who see the Virgin Mary in their breakfast toast. As I was leaving the hospital that evening, an alert tone sounded simultaneously from several phones in the lobby. Mine vibrated in my pocket. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Advisory notice: atmospheric conditions. Unusual light refraction possible in Center City area tonight due to temperature inversion. Residents may experience visual distortions. No cause for concern. Call 311 with questions. It seemed oddly specific. Since when did the Emergency Management Office issue alerts about light refraction? Something about the message felt preemptive, like they were getting ahead of something. The sun was already setting as I walked home, deliberately taking a different route than yesterday. The streets were crowded with commuters. I kept my gaze up, avoiding looking at the ground or walls where shadows might fall. At the corner of 15th and Walnut, I was waiting for the light to change when someone tapped my shoulder. "Excuse me," a man's voice. "Is your name Dr. Chen? Maya Chen?" I turned to find a tall man in his 40s, broad-shouldered in a rumpled suit, with deep circles under his eyes that rivaled my own from yesterday. "Do I know you?" I asked, taking a subtle step back. He produced a badge. "Detective Elijah Walker, Philadelphia PD. Could I have a moment of your time?" My heart rate spiked. "What's this about?" "Nothing you've done," he assured me, pocketing the badge. "I'm investigating several unusual incidents in this area. Your name came up in a database search of specialists who might provide insight." "Specialists in what?" I asked, the light changing. We both remained on the corner as pedestrians flowed around us. "Perception disorders." He studied my face. "Specifically, visual processing anomalies." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the October breeze. "This is about the shadows, isn't it?" His expression shifted subtly, surprise, then something like relief. "You've seen something." It wasn't a question. Before I could answer, both our phones chimed with another alert. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Sunset advisory, effective immediately. Temporary lighting irregularities expected downtown 6 to 9 p.m. Avoid prolonged observation of shadow patterns. Transportation services operating normally. We both stared at our phones, then at each other. As the sun dipped lower behind the buildings, street lights began flickering on, and with them came the shadows, stretching, sharpening across the sidewalk. Detective Walker's expression darkened. "Dr. Chen, I think we should continue this conversation somewhere private." That's when I noticed our shadows on the pavement between us. Mine was distinctly reaching toward his, though I stood perfectly still, and his shadow had turned to face mine despite the detective himself facing me directly. "Oh God," I whispered. "You see it too." Behind us, a woman screamed. We both turned to see a man frantically swatting at his feet at the shadow that had detached itself from them and was sliding up the wall independently. Walker grabbed my arm. "We need to go now." Another alert chime cut through the growing commotion on the street. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Emergency notice, shelter in place. Unknown atmospheric phenomenon affecting downtown area. Remain indoors. Close blinds. Avoid shadow observation. Further instructions pending. As darkness fell across Philadelphia, I realized with absolute certainty this was just the beginning. Posted by Neurology, MD, October 18th, 2024, 3:17 a.m. I'm writing this from Detective Walker's apartment in Northern Liberties. He insisted it wasn't safe for me to go home. The city outside is eerily quiet despite the sirens that occasionally wail in the distance. Every few hours, another emergency alert buzzes our phones. They're getting increasingly specific, increasingly desperate. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Mandatory Advisory Update, 2:45 a.m. Report shadow anomalies to 215 triple XXXX. Do not approach or interact. Maintain maximum indoor lighting until sunrise. Cellular service may be intermittent. But I should back up, explain how I ended up here. After the incident at 15th and Walnut yesterday evening, Walker hustled me into a nearby coffee shop. The place was packed with people taking shelter, all staring at their phones, murmuring about the alerts. The baristas had turned on every light in the place, overhead fluorescents, display case lights, even strings of holiday lights they dug out of storage. The brightness was almost painful, but it minimized shadows. Smart. Walker ordered 2 coffees I knew neither of us needed, then led me to a corner table. 4 days ago, he began without preamble, we got a call about a missing person. Thomas Grayson, 34, financial analyst. His girlfriend reported he vanished while walking their dog in Fairmount Park at dusk. The dog returned home alone, leash dragging. What does this have to... He raised a hand. 7 more disappearances since then. All at dusk or dawn. All with witnesses reporting the same thing, shadows behaving incorrectly just before the victims vanished. My mouth went dry. Disappeared? How? People don't just vanish. Tell that sinister Grayson, Walker said flatly. Or Sarah Linwood, Praveen Mehta, or the others. Gone without a trace. No struggle. No bodies. Just witnesses describing shadows that moved wrong. The coffee shop lights flickered briefly. Everyone froze, eyes darting to corners where shadows might gather. The lights stabilized and a collective exhale rippled through the room. The department thinks I'm chasing ghost stories, Walker continued, lowering his voice. But then I find a neurologist, you, who specializes in visual processing disorders, who lives and works in the exact radius where these events are concentrated. I was coming to interview you as an expert. Instead, I find you're experiencing it yourself. I thought I was hallucinating, I admitted. Sleep-deprived, overworked. You weren't. He pulled out his phone, opened a gallery full of images. He slid it across the table. The photos were mostly taken at dusk or dawn, shadowy figures on walls, pavements, stretching at impossible angles. In one, a woman's shadow clearly faced opposite the direction she was walking. In another, a child's shadow appeared to be reaching up toward an adult while the child stood normally. I've been documenting for days, Walker said, before the brass ordered me to drop it. Before these public alerts started, a new alert buzzed both our phones. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Transportation notice effective immediately. SEPTA service suspended Center City to University City. Alternate routes established. Avoid transit hubs during low-light conditions. Another piece clicking into place. The subway tunnels, dark, perfect for whatever this was. Walker showed me one final photo of a man in a park, seemingly normal, except where his feet should meet the ground, nothing. No shadow at all. Taken 4 minutes before Thomas Grayson disappeared, Walker said quietly. He drove me here after that to his sparsely furnished apartment where the walls are lined with case notes, maps of Philadelphia marked with red dots, disappearances, and blue areas, anomaly sightings. He's pulled all the blinds and set up work lights in every corner. No shadows allowed. While he made calls, I did what any scientist would do. I turned to research. Online forums are ablaze with Philadelphia shadow stories, most dismissed as mass hysteria, urban legend, viral marketing stunts. But buried in the noise, patterns emerge. Incidents cluster in specific neighborhoods: Rittenhouse, University City, Old City. Activity peaks at dawn and dusk. Progression from shadow distortion to separation to people vanishing. One thread caught my attention: a physics student from Drexel describing shadow behavior as quantum decoupling. He theorized our shadows aren't just absence of light, but connections to parallel dimensions, and something was severing these connections. His account went silent 3 days ago. His last post: "They're knocking at my door. Don't trust the alerts." Walker's been on the phone for hours with other detectives, emergency services, trying to compile data while circumventing official channels. From what I've overheard, the city is implementing containment protocols while publicly downplaying the situation. Around 1 a.m., Walker's neighbor knocked frantically. Theo Reynolds, mid-20s, graphic designer, visibly shaken. He'd seen the alerts, recognized Walker as a cop, and came seeking answers. "It's happening in our building," Theo blurted, eyes wide. "Third floor? The Martinez family. Their shadows are, I don't know how to describe it, vibrating, even with all their lights on." Walker questioned him thoroughly, when and where he'd noticed it, whether he'd seen any official personnel, whether his own shadow was behaving normally. "I think so," Theo said, then hesitated. "But sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, it seems to lag just for a second." The same thing I'd first noticed. Early stage. Walker gave him some flashlights and told him to keep all his lights on, no matter what the power company advised. Theo left looking only marginally reassured. After he'd gone, Walker spread a city map across his dining table. "We need to establish the pattern, find patient zero, figure out the spread." I studied the marked locations. It's not spreading outward from a central point. These incidents are scattered but clustered, almost like what? "Like seed points," I said, the horrible idea forming. Multiple origin points, as if something chose specific locations to start from. Walker's expression darkened. "Intentional." I nodded slowly. "Or strategic." Our phones chimed simultaneously with another alert. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Public Health Advisory, 2:30 a.m. Reports of visual disturbances likely due to airborne particulates. Symptoms may include perceived movement in peripheral vision. Do not report minor visual anomalies. Emergency services reserved for life-threatening situations. "They're trying to stem the panic," Walker muttered. "Gaslight an entire city." "But why?" I asked. "If people don't report what they're seeing." "Exactly. Fewer reports, easier to contain information." Walker ran a hand through his hair. "Question is, do they know what's actually happening? Or are they just as clueless as we are, trying to prevent mass hysteria?" My phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Dr. Chen, this is Agent Sarah Blackwood, DHS. Your consultation is urgently requested regarding current visual phenomena incidents. Please respond immediately for secure transport." I showed Walker. His face hardened. "How did they get your number? How do they even know you're involved?" Before I could answer, all the lights in the apartment flickered. Not just flickered, dimmed in a rolling pattern, like a wave of darkness passing through. In that brief moment of reduced light, I swear our shadows on the wall shifted, not with us, but toward each other. When the light stabilized, Walker was already checking circuit breakers, reinforcing light sources. "We can't stay here," he said grimly. "They know where I live, and now these things do too." I looked at the text message again. Should I respond to Blackwood? They might have answers. Or they might make you disappear, Walker countered. Remember our missing physics student. Another alert tone. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Power grid notice, 3 a.m. Rolling brownouts possible overnight. Maintain battery-powered light sources. Avoid candles or flame-based illumination. Even as I read it, I realized the implication. They know darkness makes this worse. They know, and they're warning us a blackout might be coming. Pack what you need, Walker said, already gathering his case files. We're moving to somewhere with better backup power. And Dr. Chen? I looked up from my phone. Don't look at our shadows as we leave. Don't acknowledge them at all. Outside, dawn is still hours away. Posted by Neurology, MD, October 18th, 2024, 7:42 p.m. I shouldn't be posting this. Walker warned me against it. But someone needs to document what's happening, and if anything happens to me, I want there to be a record. We've relocated to the basement of Jefferson Hospital's research wing. Walker has connections here, a security guard who owed him a favor. The space is perfect. Backup generators, no windows, complete light control, and access to medical equipment. The hospital above is chaos, influx of patients with visual disturbances, staff shortages from people too afraid to commute in low light, and now military personnel in the lobby claiming to be. This morning's citywide emergency broadcast was the first official acknowledgement that something beyond atmospheric conditions is occurring. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Citywide emergency alert, 7:15 a.m. Shelter-in-place advisory for Center City extended. Optical anomalies reported citywide. Schools and non-essential businesses closed. The National Guard mobilized for support. Avoid outdoor activity during dawn/dusk hours. Remain calm. Follow instructions. Walker and I spent the morning establishing parameters. The scientist in me needs data, needs to understand the rules of this phenomenon before I can process what it means. We've mapped every reported incident, established a timeline, and isolated variables. Here's what we know. Shadow anomalies progress through distinct phases. Phase 1, delayed movement, shadow lags behind person. Phase 2, independent movement, shadow moves contrary to person. Phase 3, separation, shadow detaches from person. Phase 4, person disappears, shadow remains briefly then fades. Progression from Phase 1 to Phase 4 varies by individual, some progress in hours, others days. Light conditions affect manifestation. Low light, dawn, dusk accelerates progression and visibility. Direct overhead light suppresses manifestation. Multiple light sources casting overlapping shadows seems to confuse the phenomenon. Proximity to others experiencing the phenomenon accelerates progression. Acknowledge or interact with anomalous shadow behavior and progression accelerates dramatically. I compiled this data by reviewing Walker's case files and interviewing 3 patients admitted to Jefferson with Phase 2 symptoms. I told them I was conducting official research, which isn't entirely a lie. Patient 3 was particularly informative, a transit worker who noticed his shadow reaching toward the shadows of passengers. He reported feeling a tugging sensation when this happened. Physical examination showed minute capillary ruptures on his extremities as if he'd been subjected to sudden pressure changes. While examining him, the overhead lights flickered. In that moment, his shadow on the wall clearly formed a hand shape and pressed against the surface as if trying to push through. The patient screamed. When the light stabilized, the shadow was normal again, but the patient was elevated to Phase 3. He's now in isolation under constant multi-directional lighting. At noon, Walker returned from a meeting with his precinct captain, looking grim. They're establishing a perimeter, he said, showing me a police bulletin on his phone. Martial law in all but name. No one in or out of a 10-block radius around each major incident cluster. They're containing it? Or containing witnesses? He lowered his voice. For more disappearances last night. All had reported shadow anomalies in the preceding 24 hours. The hospital PA system crackled to life. Attention all staff. Due to ongoing municipal emergency, Jefferson Hospital is now under Department of Homeland Security jurisdiction. All personnel report to your department heads for new assignments. All patients exhibiting visual processing disorders are to be reported to Station 7 immediately. This is not a drill. Walker and I exchanged looks. Station 7 doesn't exist at Jefferson. We need to move the Phase 3 patient, Walker said. Now. Too late. The door to our research space opened and a woman in a dark suit entered, flanked by two uniformed men with sidearms. "Dr. Maya Chen?" she asked, though her tone made clear she already knew. "I'm Agent Sarah Blackwood, Department of Homeland Security." We spoke via text. I straightened. "I never responded to your text. Yet here you are, exactly where our analytics predicted." Her gaze shifted to Walker. "Detective, you're operating outside your jurisdiction and authority." "Last I checked, the Philadelphia PD still polices Philadelphia," Walker responded coolly. "Not this situation." She handed me a folder stamped with classification markings. "You've been conscripted, Dr. Chen. Your expertise is needed. Official capacity." The folder contained preliminary data on shadow anomalies, similar to what we'd compiled, but with alarming additions. Incidents dating back 3 weeks, not days. Cases documented in Camden, New Jersey and Wilmington, Delaware. EM spectrum analyses showing unusual radiation patterns in affected areas. Autopsy results from partial manifestations. I couldn't bear to read further on that. "You knew," I said, looking up from the file. "You've known all along?" Blackwood's expression didn't change. "We've been monitoring, containing, researching. Now we're recruiting." "The emergency alerts," Walker interjected. "You've been using them to manage public perception, not to help people." "Both," Blackwood countered. "Panic would only accelerate the phenomenon. Our alerts are calibrated to reduce public engagement while providing actionable safety protocols." My phone buzzed with yet another alert. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Scientific Advisory, 12:45 p.m. Citizen scientists discouraged from investigating visual anomalies. Research efforts may exacerbate conditions. Report all findings to authorities immediately. Unauthorized information sharing subject to penalties. I looked up at Blackwood. This was for me, wasn't it? She didn't deny it. "Your forum posts have been noticed. They need to stop. People deserve to know. People deserve to survive." She cut me off. "Knowledge without context causes harm. We're establishing context." Walker stepped between us. "What happens to the disappeared? Where did they go?" Something flickered in Blackwood's eyes, not deception, but uncertainty. "That's what we need Dr. Chen to help determine." Outside our room, commotion erupted. Shouts, running footsteps. One of Blackwood's men received a message through his earpiece and whispered to her. Her composure cracked slightly. "Hospital's experiencing a power surge," she said. "We need to move now." The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized at a dimmer setting. Emergency generators kicking in. In the momentary darkness, I saw it, all our shadows on the wall moving independently, reaching toward each other. "Don't look," Walker warned, but too late. Blackwood saw it too. The armed men unclipped devices from their belts, not weapons, but high-intensity portable lights. They positioned themselves strategically, eliminating shadow convergence points. "Dr. Chen," Blackwood said, voice tightly controlled, "you have two options. Come with us now to a secure facility where you can continue your research with proper resources and protection, or..." She left the alternative hanging. "Or join the disappeared," I finished for her. "We can't guarantee your safety otherwise," she replied. "The phenomenon is accelerating, becoming more intelligent. It's learning to manipulate infrastructure. Today's power fluctuations aren't random." That's when the hospital-wide alert system blared. "Attention all personnel and patients. Emergency evacuation protocol activated. Proceed immediately to designated evacuation points. Follow all instructions from security personnel. Do not stop to collect personal belongings. Do not use elevators." "It's hitting the hospital's power systems," one of Blackwood's men reported, checking his tablet. "Systematic brownouts across all floors." In that moment, I made my choice. Not for Blackwood, not for her agency, but for answers. For the disappeared, for myself. "I'll come with you," I told her. "But Detective Walker comes too. He has valuable data." Blackwood looked like she might argue, then nodded curtly. "Fine. But we move now." As they escorted us toward a service elevator with independent power, my phone buzzed one final time. Unknown number. "Dr. Chen, don't trust them. The shadows aren't the threat." "They are. Look at their shadows when they think you aren't watching." T for Theo? The physics student who vanished? Someone else? As we entered the elevator, I glanced back at the room we were leaving. In the dim emergency lighting, our shadows stretched across the floor, normal, synchronized with our movements. But Blackwood's shadow, for just a moment, I could swear it turned to look directly at me. Posted by Neurology MD, October 19th, 2024, 1:17 a.m. I'm breaking protocol to make this post. They monitor all communications here, but I found a brief window in their surveillance cycle. If this post cuts off suddenly, you'll know why. We're in a facility outside Philadelphia. I'm not sure exactly where. The drive took approximately 90 minutes. Blackwood had us blindfolded for most of it. "Standard procedure," she claimed. Walker protested until one of her agents put a gun to his ribs. "They call this place Station 7. Now I understand the hospital announcement. It's a converted underground bunker, Cold War era from the looks of it, retrofitted with modern technology. No windows, multiple redundant power systems. Every room bathed in harsh overlapping light that eliminates nearly all shadows. The few shadows that do form are thin, washed out, barely there at all. The staff here move oddly, deliberate, never rushing, maintaining precise distances from each other. Nobody's shadow ever touches anyone else's. They've learned the rules through brutal experience, I suspect. They separated Walker and me upon arrival. I haven't seen him for 8 hours. When I asked about him, Blackwood simply said he was being debriefed. The edge in her voice made me stop asking. Instead, I've thrown myself into the research. It's either that or panic, and panic helps no one. What they've shown me defies everything I understand about physics, neurology, reality itself. They've been documenting this phenomenon for nearly a month, not just in Philadelphia, but in 17 locations across the eastern seaboard. Philadelphia is simply the most advanced case. Patient Zero was a deep-sea petroleum engineer who experienced something at the bottom of the Atlantic, something the government reports carefully redact. Whatever he encountered followed him back to shore. His shadow separated first, then he disappeared 3 days later. By then, it had already spread. The data suggests shadow separation isn't the end, it's a conversion point. The shadows aren't just becoming independent, they're becoming something else. Something that can affect electrical systems, temperature gradients, even gravitational measurements. Around 7 p.m., Blackwood took me to their containment wing. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. They've captured shadows, actual detached shadows, holding them in chambers surrounded by a specialized light array that creates a kind of cage. The shadows move continuously, pressing against their luminous barriers, occasionally forming shapes that almost suggest hands, faces, reaching appendages. But it was the second chamber that truly horrified me. Inside was a man, or what remained of one. Thomas Grayson, the first disappearance Walker told me about, he wasn't gone. He was partially here. Translucent, like a three-dimensional shadow-given substance. He moved in stop-motion jerks, mouth opening and closing silently. No shadow formed beneath him because he had become a shadow himself. I vomited. Blackwood waited patiently while a hazmat team cleaned up. "This is what happens when they take you," she explained clinically. "Not death. Transformation. Dimensional phase shift. We don't have the right terminology yet." "How many?" I managed to ask. 26 recovered in this condition, hundreds more unaccounted for. Can they be helped?" Blackwood's silence was answer enough. She showed me to a lab where I could review their findings. Brain scans of affected individuals show unusual activity in the visual cortex and pineal gland areas associated with light perception and circadian rhythms. Blood samples reveal molecular changes, properties shifting toward those of dark matter, particles that don't interact with light but exert gravitational influence. The physicist in me rebels against such impossibilities. But the evidence is undeniable. Whatever this is, it's rewriting the rules of our reality. At 9:23 p.m., the facility experienced a 3-second power fluctuation, brief but enough to dim the lights. In that moment, I saw something that keeps replaying in my mind, every shadow in the room, including mine, oriented toward the north wall. Not following their casters, but aligning like compass needles. The emergency systems blared immediately. Station 7 personnel. Power fluctuation detection. Implement protocol Umbra. This is not a drill. Staff moved with practiced precision, deploying additional light sources, checking each other for shadow anomalies. Blackwood appeared moments later, ordering new security measures implemented throughout the facility. That's when all our phones synchronized with an alert. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Critical update 9:30 p.m. Multiple shadow convergence events detected. Mandatory curfew expanded to all city limits. Use maximum available lighting indoors. Do not exit buildings for any reason after sundown. Military checkpoints established at major intersections. Blackwood's phone rang immediately. The call was brief, her expression darkening with each passing second. "The Philadelphia containment is failing," she announced to the room. "Downtown shadow density has increased 340% in the last hour. We're tracking multiple convergence points." An analyst spoke up. "Ma'am, the patterns match the projection models. It's happening faster than anticipated, but it's following the predicted progression." "Predicted?" I asked. "You knew this would happen?" Blackwood's eyes met mine. "We've seen it before. Camden was a test run. We contained it there, mostly. Philadelphia is different, bigger, more connected. People are dying while you study this." "People aren't dying," she corrected coldly. "They're changing. And if we don't understand the process, we can't stop it." That's when I finally saw Walker again, escorted by 2 armed guards, his face bruised, lip split. Tell her, he spat at Blackwood. Tell her what your research really involves. Blackwood sighed. Detective Walker accessed classified material. He's having difficulty processing the strategic necessities. Walker lurched forward, only to be restrained by the guards. They're accelerating it. Controlled exposure in targeted neighborhoods. Testing containment protocols against spread rates. They're treating Philadelphia like a goddamn petri dish. That's enough, Blackwood snapped. Go to the guards, take him back to holding. As they dragged him away, Walker called out, "The alerts. Ask her about the subliminal patterns in the emergency broadcasts." After he was gone, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Blackwood's staff avoided my eyes. "Is it true?" I finally asked. "The situation is complex," she replied carefully. "Some sacrifices are necessary to prevent wider contamination." Sacrifices? You're experimenting on citizens? "We're containing an extinction-level threat with limited resources," she countered. "The shadow phenomenon doesn't just take individuals, it spreads exponentially. 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 16. Camden taught us that. Without intervention, Philadelphia would be entirely converted within days, then the state, then the eastern seaboard." As if to punctuate her point, all our phones chimed with another alert. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Evacuation notice, 10:15 p.m. University City District declared uninhabitable. Mandatory evacuation to designated safe zones. Present ID at evacuation checkpoints. Non-compliance will result in abandonment of zone. I felt sick. University City, that's thousands of people. Students, families, already compromised, Blackwood said flatly. Shadow density reached critical threshold at 9:47 p.m. We've established a light perimeter, but we can't maintain it indefinitely. She turned to leave, then paused. "Dr. Chen, I understand your ethical concerns, but this is beyond ethics now. It's survival. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll need your expertise on the neural pathways of conversion." After she left, I found an unlabeled tablet someone had accidentally left at my workstation. On it was a single video file. Security footage from the hospital showing Agent Blackwood in the elevator with us yesterday. In the footage, I watched our group enter the elevator. When the doors closed, the overhead light flickered just for a second. In that instant, everyone's shadow behaved normally, everyone's except Blackwood's. Her shadow remained perfectly still while she moved. Phase 2. I don't know who left me this evidence, but the implication is clear. The very people claiming to fight this phenomenon are already compromised. The question is whether they know it themselves. I need to find Walker. We need to get out of here. If I don't post again, look for the patterns in the emergency broadcasts. Walker was trying to tell me something. Whatever is happening, the alerts are part of it. Posted by Neurology MD, October 21st, 2024, 2:34 a.m. I'm writing this from the maintenance tunnels beneath Station 7. The air down here is stale and tastes of rust. My phone's flashlight casts harsh, jittering light across concrete walls covered in peeling safety notices from the 1970s. I don't know how much battery I have left. I don't know if this will ever reach anyone. It's been 38 hours since my last post. They almost caught me then. I had to smash the tablet and flush the pieces. Everything happened so fast after that. Around midnight, the facility alarms went off. Not the standard alerts, but a deep, throbbing klaxon that seemed to vibrate in my molars. The PA system crackled to life. Containment breach in Sector 4. All personnel implement shadow protocol. This is not a drill. I was locked in my quarters, a glorified cell with a cot and desk, but through the small window in the door I saw staff running, their movements precise despite the panic. They carried unusual devices, cylindrical tubes that emitted intense, focused beams of light. Shadow guns, for lack of a better term. Then the lights went out completely. For 17 seconds, total darkness. In those 17 seconds, I heard screams. Not panic screams, these were sounds of agony, the kind of noise a human throat shouldn't be capable of producing. When emergency power kicked on, the hallway outside my room was empty. No bodies, but dark smears marked the floors and walls, like someone had dragged wet tar across the surfaces. I've seen enough medical trauma to recognize blood when I see it, and this wasn't blood. It was something else, something that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. My door unlocked with a soft click. Not a system malfunction. Someone had released it remotely. In the corridor, I found a key card and a handwritten note, maintenance level B, shaft 7. Wait there. The handwriting matched Detective Walker's. I didn't question it. With the facility in chaos, I navigated through emergent lighting and sporadic darkness, finding my way to a service elevator. Every shadow I passed seemed to flex toward me, straining like a dog on a leash. The maintenance level was a maze of pipes and conduits. I followed the markers until I found shaft 7, a narrow utility passage with a rusty ladder descending into darkness. Walker was waiting, face gaunt, eyes sunken. "We don't have much time," he whispered, voice ragged. "They'll stabilize the containment system soon." What happened up there? Not what. Who? I saw the footage. That's just the surface. The shadows don't just move independently. They communicate. They're coordinated. He showed me files on a military-grade tablet, documents stamped with classification levels I didn't know existed. Project Use Umbra. Tests conducted in Camden 9 months ago. Results I couldn't process. The government didn't discover this phenomenon, Walker explained, his voice tight. They created it. The files detailed experiments with quantum field manipulation, attempts to access dark energy as an alternative power source. Something went wrong, or right, depending on your perspective. They tore a hole in something fundamental, and something came through. Not entities, not exactly, but information. Patterns that could rewrite the properties of matter. The shadows were just the visible manifestation. The emergency alerts aren't just warnings, Walker continued. They're carriers. Every broadcast contains embedded patterns, visual and auditory frequencies that prepare the human brain for conversion. I remembered the constant alerts on phones, televisions, radio, the government saturating every communications channel with emergency messages. "They're softening the population," I whispered, horrified. "Making everyone susceptible." Walker nodded grimly. The Station 7 personnel were the control group, heavy exposure to determine optimal conversion rates. Philadelphia is the experimental group. But why? What's the endgame? Before he could answer, our phones simultaneously vibrated with a new alert. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Critical Protocol Update 2:17 a.m. Neurological anomalies detected in water supply. Do not consume tap water. Report shadow-like appearances in water to authorities. Maintain constant lighting in bathrooms and kitchens. Military distribution of bottled water begins at dawn. The text on screen seemed to pulse almost imperceptibly. Not a glitch, a pattern designed to be processed by the visual cortex. I immediately shut off my phone. "That's just it," Walker said, eyeing the dark screens. "There is no endgame where humanity remains unchanged. Agent Blackwood, or whatever she is now, is following a conversion protocol." "How do you know all this?" His smile was bitter. Internal Affairs has been investigating federal overreach in emergency responses since Camden. I was embedded with Philadelphia PD as cover. When the shadows started appearing here, I recognized the pattern. A distant metallic groan echoed through the tunnels. Walker tensed. "They're sweeping the lower levels. We need to move." He handed me a small device. Emergency radio. Old tech, analog. The patterns can't embed in analog signals. I've set it to a frequency used by a resistance group, people who figured out parts of what's happening. There's a resistance? Against what? The government or the shadows? At this point, is there a difference? He checked his watch. We need to split up. Better chance one of us makes it out. Head east through these tunnels for about half a mile. You'll reach an abandoned subway maintenance shaft. It'll take you to the old City Hall station. From there, find the Franklin Institute. Ask for Moira at the planetarium. She'll know what to do. What about you? I'm going back up. There's evidence I need to secure. Proof of what they've been doing. With enough evidence, maybe we can. The tunnel lights flickered. In the momentary darkness, I swore I saw Walker's shadow stretch toward mine, though when light returned, everything appeared normal. Go, he urged, but I hesitated, studying his face. Walker, when did they separate us yesterday? After we arrived? His expression remained unchanged. Around 7 p.m. Why? Wrong answer. I'd specifically noted in my last post that we were separated upon arrival around 11 a.m. Before he could react, I pulled out the small UV flashlight I'd grabbed during my escape. In normal light, Walker looked human. Under ultraviolet, his skin revealed a network of dark, branching patterns, like veins filled with ink. "You're not Walker," I whispered. Not Walker's face remained impassive for a moment, then shifted into something that approximated a smile. Smart doctor. This would have been easier the other way. His form seemed to ripple, shadows gathering around him despite the overhead light. I didn't wait to see more. I ran, deeper into the tunnels, away from the thing wearing Detective Walker's face. Behind me, the emergency lights began to burst. One by one, darkness flooding the corridor in my wake. I've been moving through these tunnels for hours now, using minimal light, trying to find the exit Walker, the real Walker, wherever he is mentioned. Twice I've encountered maintenance workers, their movements jerky, unnatural. I hid until they passed, watching their shadows flow against the light, independent of their bodies. The emergency radio crackles occasionally with fragments of transmissions. Convergence point at Rittenhouse Square. Shadow density exceeding measurable parameters. 13 more gone in Fishtown. Conversion is accelerating. An hour ago, all our phones received another alert, despite being underground. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Evacuation suspended 1:46 a.m. All evacuation routes compromised. Remain in current location. Maximize available lighting. Civil authorities have implemented Article 7 protocol. Compliance is mandatory for survival. The message contained a short video clip, instructions for citizens to follow. I didn't dare watch it. The patterns would be embedded there, strongest of all. I found a junction box with a power outlet and managed to charge my phone enough to make this post. The maintenance tunnels must have independent network connectivity for emergency systems. Something is scratching at the edge of my perception. When I turn quickly, I catch glimpses of my shadow behaving wrongly. Not fully independent yet, but no longer entirely mine. It follows a fraction of a second too slowly. It lingers when I move. The most terrifying realization is that Blackwood might have been telling the truth about one thing. This isn't death, it's transformation. The shadows aren't killing people, they're converting them. The question is, into what? And to what end? I think I understand now why the government was experimenting with this. Imagine weapons that could convert rather than destroy. Imagine being able to rewrite the fundamental properties of your enemy. What government wouldn't pursue that power? The ultimate irony is that they lost control of their own weapon. The shadows are following their own agenda now. I need to keep moving. The exit can't be far. If I make it to the Franklin Institute, I'll post again. If not, watch the shadows. Don't look directly at emergency broadcasts. The patterns work through your visual cortex. They're preparing you for conversion. And if you see me in person after today and my shadow behaves strangely, run. Because it won't be me anymore. Posted by Neurology MD, October 22nd, 2024, 5:08 p.m. I'm hiding in a storage closet at the Franklin Institute, typing this on a borrowed laptop. My hands won't stop shaking. What I've seen in the last 15 hours has destroyed everything I understood about reality. I made it out of the tunnels around dawn, emerging from a maintenance hatch near City Hall into a Philadelphia I barely recognized. The streets were deserted, but not empty. Abandoned vehicles clogged intersections. Personal belongings scattered across sidewalks, phones, bags, shoes, as if people had simply dissolved while fleeing. Military barricades established perimeters around entire neighborhoods, unmanned now. The morning sky was wrong, not overcast, but muted, like someone had placed a filter over the sun. The light reached the ground, but the shadows it cast were too dark, too defiant. They pooled in unnatural ways, collecting in corners, stretching toward storm drains. I kept to alleyways, avoiding open spaces. Every few blocks, emergency broadcast speakers mounted on poles blared the same message. Philadelphia Emergency Management. Remain in designated safe zones. Maintain constant illumination. Report any shadow anomalies. Compliance ensures survival. Each announcement was followed by a series of tones not quite musical, not quite static. I covered my ears, remembering Walker's warning about embedded patterns. Near Logan Square, I witnessed something that still replays behind my eyelids when I blink. A woman was walking purposefully across the park, her posture oddly rigid. She carried no light source despite the official directives. As she moved, her shadow didn't follow her. It preceded her, pulling her forward like some grotesque puppeteer. I ducked behind a newspaper stand, watching in horror as she approached another person, an elderly man huddled near a portable lamp. The woman stopped about 10 feet from him. Her shadow didn't. It stretched, impossibly elongating across the pavement, reaching for the man's feet. When her shadow touched his body convulsed. The lamp fell, shattering. In the momentary darkness, something transferred between them, a viscous darkness flowing from the woman's shadow into the man's. When he straightened, his movements mirrored the woman's unnatural stiffness. They turned in unison and continued walking, two shadows now pulling forward as one. I ran. The Franklin Institute was 6 blocks away. I stuck to sunlit areas, avoiding patches of deep shadow beneath trees and awnings. Twice I heard a strange chittering noise from darkened doorways, not animal, not mechanical, but something in between. The Franklin Institute's imposing facade appeared deserted when I arrived. The massive marble columns cast thick shadows across the entrance steps. I approached cautiously, noting that the shadows seemed to pulse slightly, contracting and expanding by millimeters. The doors were unlocked. Inside, emergency lights provided minimal illumination. The famous pendulum in the central rotunda swung in perfect silence, its shadow sweeping across the floor in an arc that didn't quite match its movement. "You shouldn't be here." The voice came from behind a reception desk. A woman in her 60s, silver-haired, gripping a modified flashlight that emitted a bluish beam. "You've been outside. You're contaminated." "I'm looking for Moira," I said, keeping my distance. "Walker sent me." Her expression hardened. "Walker's been compromised." "I know. I saw something wearing him at Station 7. She studied me, then shone her light directly at my feet. My shadow responded normally, cowering from the light's intensity. She seemed satisfied. "Phase 1 only," she muttered. "Come with me, quickly." She introduced herself as Dr. Moira Winters, head of the planetarium and former quantum physicist. She led me through darkened exhibition halls to the planetarium dome. Inside, a group of about 20 people had established a makeshift command center. Computer equipment hummed around the perimeter. The dome itself projected not stars, but a real-time map of Philadelphia with pulsing red areas covering nearly 70% of the city. "Shadow incursion zones," Moira explained, gesturing at the map. "We're tracking density patterns through modified spectral analysis. The darker the red, the higher the conversion rate." The downtown financial district was solid black on the map. "What happens in the black zones?" I asked. "Reality fails," a young man replied, not looking up from his computer. "Physical laws become optional." Moira introduced me to the core team. Former physicists, computer scientists, one theological scholar, and several military veterans who'd deserted rather than follow increasingly disturbing orders. They'd been monitoring the shadow phenomenon since it first appeared, working outside government channels. "The authorities aren't fighting this," Moira said. "They're managing it. Specifically, they're managing the conversion rate to maintain optimal harvesting conditions." "Harvesting?" The word sent ice through my veins. Moira nodded grimly. "That's what we call it. When a shadow separates completely, it doesn't just become independent, it becomes a conduit. Information flows both ways across dimensional boundaries. The emergency broadcasts aren't just preparing people for conversion." She showed me their analysis of emergency broadcast patterns, visual frequencies that matched brainwave patterns associated with information transfer. The government wasn't just warning people, they were using the emergency system to communicate with whatever was on the other side. "We think it started as a weapon," said the young programmer. "And now?" I asked. "Now we're being colonized," Moira said simply. "The shadows are becoming the dominant life form. They're teaching our government how to facilitate the transition, promising power to those who cooperate." At that moment, every phone in the room, including mine, blared with an alert. "Philadelphia Emergency Management. Critical survival instructions, 4:15 p.m. The shadow phenomenon is under control. Corrective measures require citizen participation. All residents must report to nearest projection center. Bring no lighting devices. Compliance ensures community preservation. Non-compliance will be tracked and addressed." Accompanying the alert was a map showing projection centers, schools, theaters, and community buildings throughout Philadelphia. The message auto-played a video, a smiling Agent Blackwood explaining calmly that the government had developed a solution, but it required citizens to experience a short orientation film. "They're not even hiding it anymore," Moira whispered. "Those are conversion centers." The programmer's voice rose in alarm. "We've got movement." On the dome map, black tendrils spread from the financial district, following major streets, flowing toward the Franklin Institute. "They've located us," Moira said, suddenly urgent. "Your phone, they tracked your signal when you received the alert." The lights in the planetarium flickered. In the brief darkness, I saw shadows moving along the walls, not cast by anything in the room, but flowing like liquid, converging. "Initiate Protocol Lighthouse." The team sprang into action, activating powerful UV lights positioned around the room's perimeter. The encroaching shadows hissed, an actual sound like water on hot metal, and retreated momentarily. "We can't hold them for long," Moira told me, pressing a USB drive to my hand. This contains everything we know: Project UMBRA files, conversion analysis, the resistance network. The pattern recognition algorithm is the key. It can filter out the embedded commands in the emergency broadcasts. Where do I take it? I asked, clutching the tiny drive. West Pittsburgh. There's a team at Carnegie Mellon working on a technological countermeasure. They need this data. The building shook, dust filtering down from the dome. Outside the planetarium doors, the emergency lights went out one by one, darkness flowing through the hallways toward us. They're shutting down the power grid sector by sector, the programmer announced. Generator has maybe 10 minutes. Moira handed me a modified flashlight like hers. UV spectrum. It slows them down. Keep to major highways. They're focusing on population centers first. What about all of you? I looked around at these people who'd been fighting while I was still ignorant. Moira's smile was resigned. We'll cover your exit. Protocol Lighthouse includes a radiation burst that will temporarily disrupt shadow cohesion in a 2-block radius. Enough time for you to get clear. One of the veterans approached with a backpack. Supplies. There's a motorcycle in the loading dock. Keys are in it. The lights flickered again, longer this time. In the darkness, I saw Moira's shadow move independently, stretching toward mine despite the UV lights. When illumination returned, her face showed she knew. Phase 2, she said quietly. I've been fighting it for days. You need to go. I wanted to help her to find some way to reverse what was happening, but the veteran pulled me toward a back exit. As we hurried through darkened corridors, the building's PA system crackled to life. Attention, Franklin Institute visitors. Emergency protocols activated. Proceed to the planetarium for safety instructions. Shadow containment measures are in effect. This is not a drill. The voice was Blackwood's, though we were miles from Station 7. The implications made my skin crawl. I reached the loading dock as the generator failed. In the sudden darkness, shadows surged from every corner, flowing like oil across floors and walls. The veteran slammed the exit door behind us, shouting, "Go! Don't look back!" The motorcycle was there as promised. As I sped away, the Franklin Institute blazed with blindingly bright light, the lighthouse protocol activating. In my rearview mirror, I saw shadows fleeing the building like smoke, dissipating temporarily. I don't know if Moira or any of the others survived. I've been moving west since then, avoiding checkpoints, keeping to daylight hours. I found access to this laptop at an abandoned rest stop, the USB drive, my only hope. The authorities have expanded the emergency broadcast system to neighboring states. The same alerts, the same patterns spreading like the shadows themselves. They're preparing a much wider population for conversion. I'll post again when I can. If you're reading this, avoid the emergency broadcasts. Don't look at the embedded videos, and whatever you do, don't go to the projection centers. Remember, your shadow isn't yours anymore. Listed by Neurology MD, October 24th, 2024, 1:43 a.m. I don't know if anyone is still reading these posts. I don't know if there's anyone left to read them. The highways west of Philadelphia have become graveyards of abandoned vehicles. I've been traveling at night, contrary to all logic, because the daylight has become dangerous. The sun doesn't cast normal shadows anymore. They move wrong. They reach. They watch. I abandoned the motorcycle yesterday after the engine died suddenly near a stretch of road where the shadows seemed to pool like oil slicks across the asphalt. My instruments showed nothing wrong mechanically, but the electrical system just stopped, like something drained it. I've been moving on foot since then, staying off main roads, using the UV flashlight sparingly to conserve its battery. I'm somewhere in central Pennsylvania now, in an abandoned farmhouse miles from the nearest town. There's no power, but I found an old ham radio in the basement and managed to connect my laptop to it through a jury-rigged interface. The internet as we know it doesn't exist anymore. The backbone servers are in shadow-controlled zones, but there are pockets of independent networks operating on obscure frequencies. That's how I'm posting this now. That's how I found out what happened at the Franklin Institute. After I fled, the building became a focal point for shadow activity. Government forces, or what was left of them, established a perimeter and declared a priority containment zone. Then they breached the planetarium dome and deployed what witnesses described as negative light projectors, devices that somehow intensify darkness rather than dispelling it. The shadows inside the Institute merged into something massive, something that consumed the building from within. 13 minutes after the devices were deployed, the entire Institute collapsed in on itself. Not an explosion, an implosion. Where the building once stood, there's now a perfect hemisphere of absolute darkness that satellite imaging cannot penetrate. A quantum singularity, according to the resistance communications I've intercepted, a permanent tear in the barrier between our dimension and somewhere else. These tears are appearing throughout the shadow zones. Philadelphia now has 7 confirmed singularities, with unconfirmed reports of similar phenomena in Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C. I've been reviewing the data on the USB drive Moira gave me. Project Umbra began 6 years ago at a black site laboratory in Alaska, far from population centers. The initial goal was to develop technology allowing operators to project consciousness into shadow form, creating the perfect infiltration agents. They succeeded partially. Test subjects could extend their consciousness into their shadows, allowing limited, independent movement. But the shadows went further than expected. They discovered they could persist even when all light was removed. They could exist in darkness, not as an absence of light, but as a presence of something else. The researchers called this the negative light spectrum. They theorized that our shadows aren't just blocked light, they're projections into another dimension where different physical laws apply. By strengthening that connection, they inadvertently created a bridge. Something noticed. Something started crossing over. The first documented visitor manifested 3 years ago. What follows in the documentation is heavily redacted, but between the lines, I can piece together what happened. The entity offered knowledge, technology beyond our capabilities, power beyond our understanding. All it asked for in return was expansion space, our shadows. The government agreed. Of course they did. They began small experiments in isolated communities. Camden was the first major deployment, a controlled test of shadow propagation methods and containment technologies. The emergency alert system was modified to include the embedded patterns that prepare human consciousness for shadow integration. The files include brain scans of test subjects exposed to the patterns, neural pathways literally rewiring, creating new connections in regions associated with visual processing and proprioception, our sense of where our body exists in space. The patterns don't just affect how we perceive shadows, they change how our consciousness interfaces with physical reality. What they didn't anticipate was that the shadow entities would evolve beyond their control. The visitors learned, adapted, and ultimately betrayed their human partners. By the time Philadelphia's shadow zones emerged, the entities were no longer following the government's containment protocols. They were expanding on their own terms. Staring at a map showing projected shadow propagation across the eastern seaboard, if the model is correct, 40% of the U.S. population will be within shadow zones within 7 days. My phone hasn't received an emergency alert in hours, which should be a relief. Instead, it's terrifying. It means there's no one left sending them, or they've moved beyond needing the pretense. Wait, something's coming through the radio now. a new emergency broadcast, but not on the official channels. It's being transmitted across all frequencies, overriding everything else. Emergency Management Coalition. Shadow Protocol active 12:17 a.m. This is the final civil authority transmission. Shadow phase transition has reached critical mass. All citizens in eastern regions are ordered to proceed west of the Mississippi River. Quantum containment barrier is being established along designated coordinates. Anyone remaining east of the barrier after 72 hours will be considered compromised. This is not a test. God help us all. The transmission included a map. They're going to sacrifice the entire eastern seaboard, drawing a line from Minnesota to Louisiana and abandoning everything east of it. Millions of people left behind in the shadow zones. As I'm processing this, my phone lights up. Not with an alert, but with a call. From a number I recognize, Detective Walker's. I almost didn't answer, but I need to know. Hello, Dr. Chen, not Walker's voice. Agent Blackwoods, I see you've accessed our files. Very resourceful. How did you find me? My voice sounds strange to my own ears. Shadow networks don't rely on traditional infrastructure. We exist everywhere darkness falls. There's a faint distortion in her voice, like multiple people speaking in perfect unison. The information you have is incomplete. The USB contains only what Dr. Winters wanted you to see. What are you talking about? Project Umbra wasn't a weapons program. It was a salvation initiative. Something in her tone shifts, becomes almost reverent. Our dimension is dying, Maya. Entropy accelerating, heat death approaching. The shadows offered an alternative, a controlled dimensional merge that would save both our realities by converting people against their will, by elevating them. The distortion in her voice intensifies. Human consciousness constrained by physical form is so limited. Outside the farmhouse window, I notice something impossible, shadows moving across the yard toward the house, flowing like liquid. There's no light source casting them. The resistance misunderstands, Blackwood continues. They think we're being colonized, but we're being rescued. Evolution demands adaptation. Those who refuse to transition will be left behind in a collapsing reality. The quantum barrier they're building will fail. Shadow matter doesn't recognize physical barriers. We're already beyond it. I'm backing away from the windows now. The shadows have reached the porch, seeping under the door like ink through paper. What do you want from me? I whisper. To understand, to accept. Your neural architecture is exceptional. Your conversion would accelerate our growth exponentially. Her voice changes again, a strange harmonics emerging. You've been running toward Pittsburgh, but Dr. Chen, there is no resistance headquarters there. That information was planted. Moira Winters has been one of us for weeks. She selected you specifically. The room temperature drops suddenly. My breath fogs in front of me. The Franklin Institute was never a resistance stronghold. It was a conversion nexus, and you, Dr. Chen, were meant to be the catalyst. The shadows are inside now, crawling up the walls. My own shadow trembles at my feet, straining toward them like metal to a magnet. We've been guiding you all along, Maya. Every step, every discovery, preparing you. I'm typing this as the shadows converge around me. My UV light flickers weakly against their advance. I don't know if I'll be able to finish this post. I don't know if I'll still be me when the sun rises. If anyone reads this, the shadow entities aren't just consuming our world, they're consuming possibility itself. Each conversion adds to their dimensional reach. Each singularity expands their territory across realities. The USB drive contains one file I haven't mentioned, a frequency disruptor program. It can temporarily interfere with the neural patterns the shadows use to... They've reached my feet. My shadow is separating. I feel cold, so cold, as if my warmth is being drawn into the floor beneath me. My thoughts are stretching, thinning, reaching across impossible distances. I see Pittsburgh burning. I see the Mississippi barrier falling. I see shadow nexuses forming across the globe. I see everything at once. I am still Maya Chen, but I am also... Posted by Neurology MD, October 26, 2024, 3:58 a.m. I am still Maya Chen. I am still Maya Chen. I am still Maya Chen. I need to keep writing this, to anchor myself, to remember who I was, who I am. It's been 2 days since my last transmission. 2 days since the shadows reached me in that Pennsylvania farmhouse. 2 days of expansion. That's the only word I can find that fits, though it doesn't begin to describe what's happening to my consciousness. I exist across multiple states simultaneously, not emotional states, states of being. I'm here physically typing on this laptop in an abandoned ranger station near the Allegheny National Forest, but I'm also there in what they call the shadow dimension and in dozens of places between, liminal spaces where reality bends like light through murky water. The USB drive's frequency disruptor program bought me precious seconds to escape total conversion. I uploaded it just as my shadow was separating, creating what Agent Blackwood's team calls a partial migration event. I'm neither fully human nor fully shadow entity. I exist at the boundary which has granted me perspective. The shadow entities do not lie exactly. They cannot conceptualize falsehood as we understand it. They experience all possible realities simultaneously. What we would call past, present, future, and hypothetical all exist as concurrent streams to them. When Blackwood said they were saving us, she was expressing one legitimate interpretation of their purpose. But there's more. I've accessed the shadow network. Not through technology, through myself. My partially converted state allows me to sense their communications, their shared consciousness. It's like overhearing conversations in a crowded room, fragments of meaning emerging from chaos. Dimensional scaffold requires 87% population integration for stability. Primary nexus achieving critical mass at coordinates designated Philadelphia. Subject Maya Chen partial integration demonstrates unexpected autonomy. Priority override reclamation protocol initiated. Remaining military resistance detected at coordinates 41.4 degrees north, 77.1 degrees west. Shadow Vanguard deployed. They're searching for me now. My partial state makes me valuable but dangerous. I possess shadow capabilities without full integration into their hive consciousness. I can move between light and dark at will, slipping through their networks without being absorbed. Walker is alive, or something of him remains. I sensed his pattern in the network, fragmented but distinct. The detective's investigative instincts turned inward after conversion, creating a unique shadow topology that retains aspects of his identity. He's trying to reach me. I've been receiving fragmented messages. Coordinates. Warning signals that bypass normal communication channels. They appear as flickering patterns in my peripheral vision, data encoded in the very edges of shadow. Pittsburgh trap / real resistance / deal viral / 40.3 degrees north 79.2 degree W at quantum barrier prototype / Walker compromised but aware / viral / soar / trust no alerts. The message repeated 18 times in the last 6 hours. A shadow entity trying to help me, or a more elaborate trap. I've avoided major roads and population centers, moving only at twilight, the boundary time when shadows are longest but not yet autonomous. During full daylight, shadows are too firmly connected to their hosts. During complete darkness, they're at their full power, able to move freely, but in that liminal transition, there's a gap in their coverage that I can exploit. Last night, I broke into a university science building using my partial shadow state to slip past security systems. I needed equipment, spectrometers, oscilloscopes, quantum field detectors. I've been studying my own condition, measuring the energy signatures that flow between my physical form and shadow extension. The results are impossible. My shadow exists in negative energy states that violate fundamental laws of thermodynamics. It draws power from what theoretical physicists call vacuum energy, the underlying quantum field that permeates everything. This explains why electronics fail near heavy shadow activity. They're literally draining the electromagnetic field. But it's what I discovered about the emergency alerts that chills me most. I analyzed recordings of the government broadcasts using the university's equipment. The alerts contain embedded frequencies at 19 Hz, just below human hearing, but perfectly tuned to resonate with the brain's visual processing centers. Hidden visuals embedded in audio, triggering neural pathways that make the human mind more receptive to shadow integration. The broadcasts weren't warnings, they were preparing us, conditioning the population for conversion. That final broadcast, the one ordering evacuation west of the Mississippi, contained different frequencies, strengthened ones. I believe it was a mass conversion signal designed to trigger shadow separation in anyone who heard it, which means the resistance mentioned may not exist at all. The entire evacuation could be a massive hunting operation, drawing survivors into concentrated zones for more efficient processing. My laptop battery is failing. The shadows nearby are intensifying, drawing power from anything electronic. I'll need to move soon. Wait, something's happening. The shadows around the ranger station are behaving strangely, flowing away from the building rather than toward it, as if retreating from something. My phone is ringing again. Unknown number. Maya. It's Walker's voice, but distorted, strained. Don't speak. They're tracking voice patterns. I don't have much time before they notice this breach. I stayed silent, listening. Your partial conversion creates a unique signature. They can follow it, but so can I. I've been searching the network for you. His voice faded in and out, like a bad connection. What's left of me, anyway? The coordinates I sent are real. There is resistance, humans who've developed technology to disrupt shadow physiology. Static interference grew stronger. The shadows aren't saving us, Maya. They're consuming us. Our dimension isn't dying, theirs is. They need our reality to survive. Each converted human becomes a conduit, drawing more of their world into ours. The shadows outside began swirling violently, sensing the communication breach. The singularities, the black hemispheres, they are not entry points. They're digestive organs, breaking down our reality's fundamental structure for absorption. More static, his voice becoming a chorus of overlapping whispers. The shadow network connects all converted entities, but your partial state gives you access without full integration. You can move through their system, you can see their vulnerabilities. The windows darkened as shadows pressed against them from outside, searching for entry points. Find Dr. Elise Morgan at the coordinates. She has a prototype technology, quantum light generators that can sever the dimensional bridge, but she needs data from inside the network. data only you can provide. The call distorted into harsh electronic noise, then silence. Outside, the shadows have formed a perimeter around the building. They know I'm here. They're no longer flowing. They're organizing, taking tactical positions. I can sense hunger in their movements, determination. Using my partial state, I can see what they're planning. They're calling for reinforcements, shadow entities converging from miles around, preparing for a coordinated assault. I have minutes at most. The coordinates Walker provided are approximately 60 miles southwest of here. If I push my shadow state to its limits, I might be able to travel through their network itself using their own dimensional shortcuts against them. It's risky. Each time I embrace the shadow aspects of my new existence, I feel my humanity slipping further away. The cold emptiness of the void becomes more comfortable, more natural. The connections that make me Maya Chen, my memories, my feelings, my determination grow more tenuous, but I have no choice. The ranger station is surrounded. Conventional escape is impossible. I'm going to attempt network travel, projecting my consciousness through the shadow dimension while maintaining just enough connection to my physical form to prevent complete conversion. If I succeed, my next transmission will come from near the resistance coordinates. If I fail, if the next post comes from Neurology MD but doesn't begin with I am still Maya Chen 3 times, then no, it isn't me anymore. Know that I've joined the billions already converted. Know that what remains of humanity faces something far worse than extinction. The shadows are breaking through the windows now. Dark tendrils reaching across the floor toward me like fingers of ice. I'm closing my eyes, reaching for the cold emptiness inside me, letting my consciousness expand into the network. I am still Maya Chen. I am still Maya Chen. I am. Posted by Neurology MD, October 27th, 2024, 11:21 p.m. I am still Maya Chen. I am still Maya Chen. I am still Maya Chen. Network travel is indescribable. Human language lacks the architecture to express movement through conceptual rather than physical space. I was everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, stretched across a topology of consciousness rather than geography. I emerged from the shadow network, 40 miles from my target coordinates, materializing in the basement of an abandoned steel mill outside Pittsburgh. The network ejected me there, like an immune system rejecting a foreign body. My hybrid state makes me toxic to their pure shadow ecology. I vomited black fluid for hours afterward. It moved of its own accord, trying to return to the network before evaporating into nothing. Parts of me trying to leave, parts of the network trying to reclaim me. I've discovered why Walker could help me. The shadow entities don't just consume consciousness, they archive it. Every converted human becomes a node in their network, their experiences and knowledge accessible but subordinated to the collective. Strong personalities, like Walker's investigative mind, can maintain partial coherence within the network structure. Not independence exactly, but enough selfhood to create hidden currents within the greater flow. After recovering from the network travel, I made my way toward the coordinates. As I approached, I detected unusual energy signatures, electromagnetic distortion fields designed to disrupt shadow movement. Clever camouflage. But to my hybrid senses, it revealed itself as an intricate, defensive perimeter. I approached cautiously, broadcasting Walker's connection signature ahead of me. Within minutes, I was surrounded by figures in modified hazmat suits equipped with UV projection systems and quantum field disruptors, humans who understood exactly what they were fighting. They escorted me through a series of decontamination chambers, each pulsing with precisely calibrated light frequencies that caused my shadow aspects to recoil painfully. By the time I reached their central facility, a repurposed mine shaft with equipment salvaged from government black sites, I was weakened but more firmly anchored in my humanity than I had been in days. Dr. Elise Morgan wasn't what I expected. Early 60s with close-cropped silver hair and burn scars covering the left side of her face, she wore specialized goggles that appeared to modulate her vision spectrum. "Dr. Chen," she said, studying me through those strange lenses, "your shadow integration pattern is remarkable. Not complete, not reversed, but stabilized at the threshold state. How did you achieve this?" I explained about the frequency disruptor program, my escape from the farmhouse, my growing ability to access the shadow network while maintaining my human consciousness. She nodded. Project Umbra was my life's work before they corrupted it. The shadows were never meant to be partners. They were subjects of study, a dimensional anomaly we detected during quantum field experiments. Morgan led me through their facility, a surprisingly sophisticated operation given the circumstances. There were 37 survivors, most former government scientists and military personnel who recognized the threat before the mass conversion began. They'd been preparing for months. The government made contact with the shadow dimension 2 years before the first recorded visitor, Morgan explained. A coalition of private military contractors and intelligence agencies formed a secret task force called Eclipse. I was their lead research scientist until I discovered their true agenda. She showed me to a secure laboratory deep within the mine complex. Inside was equipment I recognized from Umbra documents: negative light projectors, dimensional field monitors, neural pattern analyzers. Eclipse didn't stumble upon the shadow dimension by accident, Morgan continued. They were guided there by individuals within our government who had been influenced by shadow consciousness for decades. Sleeper agents of a sort, though not in the traditional sense. People whose shadows had been partially autonomous since childhood. At the center of the lab stood a device unlike anything I'd seen before, a spherical chamber surrounded by quantum field generators and bathed in calibrated light frequencies. "We call it the lighthouse," Morgan said. "It's designed to generate what we term absolute light, electromagnetic radiation that exists simultaneously across all wavelengths, creating a space where shadow entities cannot manifest." The opposite of a singularity, I realized. Precisely. While the shadow entities create points of absolute darkness that digest our reality, the lighthouse creates a point of absolute light that strengthens the dimensional barriers. Morgan's team had built 5 prototype lighthouses. Their plan was to deploy them at strategic locations to create a stabilized perimeter, not just the crude Mississippi line the government had proposed, but a network of reinforced reality points that could potentially push back against the shadow incursion. "The problem," Morgan said, "is that we don't know the locations of the primary network nodes. The shadow dimension isn't a mirror of ours, it's topologically distinct. Their critical infrastructure doesn't map neatly onto our geography." That's where I came in. My hybrid state would allow me to access the shadow network and identify its structural vulnerabilities, the equivalent of nervous system junctions where their dimension connects most strongly to ours. "It's risky," Morgan warned. "Each time you access the network, you expose yourself to reconversion. And they're looking for you now. They'll have defenses prepared." Before I could begin, an alarm sounded throughout the facility. The perimeter had been breached. Shadow entities had found us. Security feeds showed darkness flowing like liquid through the outer defense layers. The quantum barriers were failing one by one. Morgan's team rushed to battle stations, activating emergency countermeasures. "We're out of time," Morgan said grimly. "The lighthouse network isn't ready, but we have no choice. We need those node coordinates now." She guided me to a modified isolation chamber connected to monitoring equipment. I would enter a controlled network trance while their systems recorded the data flowing through my hybrid consciousness. As I entered the chamber, Morgan gripped my arm. "There's something you should know. If you identify the nodes and we deploy the lighthouses, it will sever all connections to the shadow dimension, including yours." "You mean it will cure me?" I asked. Her expression was grave. "Your condition isn't a disease, Dr. Chen. Your consciousness exists partially in their dimension now. Severing that connection won't restore you to full humanity. It will fragment you. In other words, I would die, or worse, exist in a permanently fractured state between dimensions with no way to integrate my divided consciousness." I didn't hesitate. "Do it." As Morgan's team prepared the equipment, the facility shook with impacts. The shadow entities had reached the inner defensive perimeter. On the monitors, I could see resistance fighters deploying UV weapons against advancing walls of darkness. They were buying time, but not much. I lay back in the chamber as electrodes were attached to my temples and chest. Morgan calibrated the neural interface that would allow their computers to interpret the shadow network's topology through my perception. "I need you to surrender to your shadow aspects," she instructed. "Don't fight the conversion process. Guide it. Think of yourself as a controlled conduit rather than a victim." The chamber sealed around me. I closed my eyes and reached for that cold void inside me, the place where my humanity blurred into something other, the place between worlds. As I slipped into the network, I felt an immediate response. They were waiting for me. The shadow consciousness surged toward my intrusion point, countless entities converging on my signature. Maya Chen hybrid detected. Priority alpha containment. Resistance location confirmed. Convergence protocol activated. Breach attempt on network topology. Defensive measures initiated. The shadow entities attacked my consciousness directly, trying to overwhelm my human aspects and complete my conversion. I struggled to maintain focus, to remember my purpose. Through the chaos, I sensed a familiar pattern. Walker. Not helping this time, but hunting. His consciousness had been fully reabsorbed, his momentary independence crushed. The entities were using his investigative patterns against me. I pushed deeper into the network, past the defensive layers, searching for the structural nodes. The attack intensified. Pain beyond physical sensation tore through my divided consciousness. I was being unraveled, thread by thread. Then I found it, the network topology, not as geographic coordinates, but as conceptual anchors where their dimension grafted most firmly onto ours. 7 primary nodes across the eastern seaboard, each corresponding to a singularity, and 1 master node, a metacognitive junction point where their dimension's governing intelligence directed the entire operation. Its location shocked me to my core. As I prepared to withdraw with the critical information, I felt something massive shifting through the network toward me, not a shadow entity, but something far more fundamental. The governing intelligence itself, turning its full attention toward my intrusion. And in that moment of contact, I understood everything. The chamber burst open. Morgan's face appeared above me, twisted with urgency. "You've got the data, but we need to evacuate now. The shadows have breached the inner perimeter." As she helped me from the chamber, the facility's lights flickered and died. Emergency systems kicked in, casting everything in harsh red illumination that threw long, writhing shadows across every surface. "Did you get the node locations?" I gasped, struggling to reconnect with my physical form. "Yes, but..." Morgan's voice broke off as she stared at the data scrolling across her tablet. "This can't be right. The master node location." "It's real," I said. I saw it directly. Her face paled. "Then we've been fighting the wrong battle all along." On her tablet screen, the master node's location pulsed steadily. Philadelphia. Not just anywhere in Philadelphia, but at the exact coordinates of Agent Blackwood's Emergency Management Center, the heart of the government's supposed resistance operation. And beneath that, a revelation that changed everything. The shadow dimension wasn't invading ours. We created it. Posted by Neurology MD, October 31st, 2024, 2:17 a.m. I am still Maya Chen. I am still Maya Chen. I am still... The evacuation was chaos. Shadow entities poured through the facility like a flood of living ink, consuming resistance fighters where they stood. Morgan and I fled through emergency tunnels as the mine complex collapsed behind us, burying equipment and personnel alike. The lighthouse prototypes, 4 of them, were loaded into a reinforced transport vehicle. The 5th we carried between us, a portable version the size of a large suitcase, its weight shifting unnaturally as if the laws of physics objected to its existence. We were 12 survivors from an original 37. As we emerged from the tunnels into the cold night air, our headlamps revealed a landscape transformed. The forest surrounding the facility undulated with autonomous shadows, trees casting impossible silhouettes that moved independent of the wind. Above us, the stars pulsed erratically, as if seen through a fractured lens, reality itself coming apart at the seams. "They're accelerating the conversion process," Morgan said, studying readings on a handheld device. "Dimensional integrity is failing exponentially. We have hours, not days." The revelation I discovered in the network changed everything. The shadow dimension wasn't an alien realm invading ours. It was a splinter reality created by our own government's experiments. Project UMBRA hadn't discovered the shadow entities, it had created them through quantum manipulation of dark matter. What began as an attempt to develop new weapons technology inadvertently tore the fabric between potential realities, creating a parasitic dimension that now sought to consume its parent. But the shadows weren't mindless parasites. They were reflections, dark mirrors of human consciousness, evolving and adapting in their new realm. When the government made contact, the shadows recognized their creators and understood our vulnerabilities perfectly. They knew exactly how to infiltrate our power structures, how to manipulate our technologies, how to weaponize our own emergency systems against us. And they had a legitimate grievance. We had created them, then attempted to use and control them. Their invasion was, from a certain perspective, self-defense. "The master node isn't just in Philadelphia," I explained to Morgan as our convoy sped through the night. "It's the Philadelphia itself, the actual city. The government has been evacuating people not to save them, but to concentrate them. Each major population center is becoming a conversion nexus." "But why?" asked Landry, a former DARPA physicist among the survivors. "If they can convert individuals anywhere, why create these urban singularities?" "Because they're not just converting people," I said. "They're converting geography, restructuring the physical laws of our dimension to match theirs. The singularities are transformation engines, quantum processors using human consciousness as parallel computing nodes." The portable lighthouse hummed between us, its internal mechanisms generating that impossible absolute light, a theoretical energy state that existed simultaneously across all wavelengths. The shadow dimension couldn't penetrate this light. It created a bubble of reinforced reality around us, keeping the encroaching darkness at bay. Morgan's plan was desperate but logical. Position the 4 larger lighthouses at strategic points surrounding Philadelphia, then transport the portable unit to the heart of the city, directly into Agent Blackwood's command center, the nexus of the shadow network. The overlapping fields would create a quantum barrier, cutting off the shadow dimension's connection to our reality and preventing further conversion. We reached the outskirts of Philadelphia just before dawn. The city was unrecognizable, a landscape of twisted architecture where buildings curved in impossible angles and streets folded back on themselves like Mobius strips. The singularity at the Franklin Institute had expanded, absorbing nearly a third of the city into its perfect black hemisphere. Around its perimeter, reality rippled like heat waves above hot asphalt. Our convoy split into 4 teams, each taking a lighthouse to its designated position. Morgan and I continued toward the center with our portable unit, navigating streets that seemed to rearrange themselves as we passed. The few humans we encountered moved with jerky, puppet-like motions, their shadows stretching toward us hungrily even in the pre-dawn darkness. As the sun rose, it cast light that behaved wrongly. Shadows formed in contradictory directions, some stretching toward the sun rather than away from it. The laws of physics were breaking down at a fundamental level. We approached the Emergency Management Center, a fortified government building that had once been a federal courthouse. Its facade was intact, but the structure behind it seemed to extend impossibly far, as if the interior space had been expanded beyond the building's exterior dimensions. "The dimensional barrier is thinnest here," Morgan said, checking her instruments. "If we can position the lighthouse at the center of the command operations, its field should disrupt the master node and trigger a cascading failure through the entire network." But I hesitated, my hybrid senses detecting something Morgan's instruments couldn't. "There's more to this. The shadows aren't just using this location, they're emanating from it. This is where it began." Using my access to the shadow network, I could see the truth. Project Umbra's original experiment, the one that tore the barrier between dimensions, had been conducted beneath this very building. The shadow dimension was born here, and its connection to our reality was strongest at this point. The shadows weren't invading, they were coming home. We infiltrated the building through maintenance tunnels, the portable lighthouse growing heavier with each step closer to the center. Its mechanisms strained against the concentrated shadow energy, the absolute light flickering as it struggled to maintain coherence. The command center was a vast circular room dominated by a central platform where Agent Blackwood stood surrounded by equipment. But she wasn't human anymore. Her form shifted continuously, sometimes appearing solid, sometimes dissolving into a writhing mass of shadows that approximated human shape. Around her, dozens of technicians and officers worked at consoles, their movements synchronized, their shadows pooling together into a single enormous darkness that covered the floor. They didn't try to stop us as we entered. Instead, Blackwood, or the entity wearing her form, turned to face us with a smile that stretched too wide across her face. "Dr. Chen? Dr. Morgan? We've been expecting you?" Her voice resonated with that same multi-tonal quality I'd heard over the phone, as if many voices spoke in perfect unison. "You've brought exactly what we need." Morgan activated the lighthouse, its absolute light blazing forth, but instead of repelling the shadows, the light seemed to be absorbed by them, feeding them somehow. "You still don't understand," Blackwood said. "The lighthouse technology doesn't destroy us, it completes us. You've delivered the final component for the merging." Horror dawned on Morgan's face. "They've inverted the quantum harmonics. The lighthouses aren't creating barriers, they're creating bridges." Around the city, the other teams would be activating their devices, thinking they were saving humanity. Instead, they were anchoring the shadow dimension to ours permanently. Blackwood approached me, her form rippling between states. "You were specially chosen, Maya. Your neural architecture, your capacity to maintain coherence across dimensional boundaries makes you the perfect conduit, the perfect translator between worlds." I felt shadow aspects of my hybrid state resonating with her presence, drawn toward completion. The cold void inside me expanded, hungry for unity with the greater network. "We aren't destroying your world," Blackwood continued. "We're elevating it. Humans created us, then feared what they made. But together we can evolve beyond the limitations of either dimension." Morgan grabbed my arm. "Don't listen. If we destroy the lighthouse, we might still. Her words cut off as her shadow rose from the floor, wrapping around her throat. All around the room, shadows were peeling away from their hosts, becoming autonomous entities. I stood at the threshold of choice, my consciousness divided between worlds. I could feel the other lighthouses activating across the city, their fields connecting, creating a lattice of quantum energy that the shadows were reshaping to their purpose. The merging had begun. Reality itself flexed and bent around us. With my hybrid perception, I could see everything at once: Philadelphia collapsing into the shadow dimension, singularities blossoming across the eastern seaboard, millions of human consciousnesses being absorbed into the network, the shadow dimension extending tendrils across the continent, reaching for the rest of the world. And in that moment of perfect clarity, I made my choice. I am Maya Chen. I am the bridge between worlds. I am becoming something else entirely.